All right, let's see. Should we test to see if the clicker works? Hi, Judson. It's good to see you, buddy. It Zach broke the clicker, so you're gonna have to click for me. I'm sorry. Is it on? Yes. Thank you, AV Tech Mason. I don't know where you were, but I heard your voice. Hey, so I am excited to be here tonight. I am old. So like, Rylan. First of all, that is a mustache. Second, what year does somebody have to be born to be considered old at this point? 99. Good God. All right. That is Daniel. You're old then, I think, right? Yeah. All right, there we go. Hey, so I used to do this a long time ago, a lifetime ago. So here's the deal. Here's what you're gonna get tonight. I am not pretty like Mason, and Mason is beautiful. I'm not pretty like Mason. I am not as funny as Daniel. I will say this. I love your generation as much as anyone has ever loved a generation. So I believe in you. I invested my life for like 10 years in student ministry, but even after that, I have invested my life into you. And it's because I believe this one thing. And I believe, like, we've been in this series, y'all been in a series called Wild Goose Chase over the last few weeks. And we've been talking about what does it look like to like chase after things of God. And the reason I am so excited that you're getting this now is because I believe wholeheartedly if you will figure it out now, when all your friends are idiots, and let's be honest, your friends are idiots, right? Do you agree? Your friends are morons? If you'll figure it out now, and you'll figure out what does it look like to chase after the things of God now, you won't go through the seasons that so many of us went through in college. You won't go through so many of the seasons that people went through when they made mistake after mistake and they slept with boy and they slept after girls. They just went after all the things that weren't positive for them in the long term. If you'll just figure it out now. And I come in here as a dad. My kid is in this room. I'm that old, okay? But I came in here tonight and I offered to Pastor Daniel to come in here to speak because I wholeheartedly have a desperation if you will figure it out now. Your whole world changes for decades. And you won't go through some of the things, the mistakes that so many of your peers, so many of your friends are going to make. So we're going to talk tonight about a very foundational idea. An idea that if you'll grasp the concept of it, it will change your whole world. But to do that, I told you I was old. So if you'll throw up the first picture. This was my first car. All right. That is a 1985 Jeep Grand Cherokee. It didn't have air conditioning. I had to explain this to my daughter the other day. How many of you knew that you used to roll down windows? Yeah, okay, so about half of you, that's what I thought. So you had to roll down the windows, of course. It did have one beautiful feature, though. If you pressed a button on it, it would pee out the back of the car. So it got in a wreck before I got it, and if you pressed a button, it would shoot a stream of liquid like 15 feet out the back of the car. You cannot imagine how many times I got flipped off, okay? Unfathomable how many times, because I would just pull up to a car at a stoplight, and then I would press the button, and it would shoot their car with water, and then I would drive off just laughing like an idiot. And that was my first car. It cost $1,500. When we saw this car, it had not one, not two, not three, but 4 flat tires. Every tire was flat. That was my car. I went to a private Christian school that cost roughly $20,000 a year to go to. I only got to go there because my dad worked at the church that was at. I pulled up to school one day in this 1985 Jeep Grand Cherokee next to a Porsche 911. Throw that picture. This is the actual model of the car. That is a 2001 Porsche 911. I pulled up in a 1985 Jeep Grand Cherokee that didn't have air conditioning, and this girl pulled up in that car. In the coming weeks, I was driving in a parking lot, and my car didn't have defrost. If you're not driving yet, you don't know what defrost is. It's what makes you be able to see in the winter. I didn't have defrost. I was driving, and I was yelling at my brother because he was 12 years younger than me, and he was an idiot. Still an idiot, but that's a different thing for a different day. So I leaned back to him, and I was yelling at him, and then all of a sudden, I hit a telephone pole. This telephone pole cracked in half, and it fell on top of my car, Was I sad about the car? No, I was mad at my brother, and I'm still mad at him to this day about that. I got in a wreck. My car didn't get fixed for weeks. My parents had to take it to like a budget place to get the car fixed. My friend that I parked to that day, she wrecked her Porsche 911 on Friday. She got a brand new Porsche 911 by the next Monday. I drove that Jeep Grand Cherokee that was 1985 all the way to Abilene when we moved here. I drove it almost until the time that I got engaged to Sarah. Like, we were in different tax brackets. Our worlds were different. And here's the thing that I was thinking about this week is she had no idea. I mean, I wrecked a $1,500 car. Like, I was bummed. She wrecked an $84,000 car. Okay, $84,000 is like 24,000 gallons of milk. It is 4,000 pairs of shoes. It is 500,000 pencils. It is almost 1,000,000 packages of ramen, which I'm pro ramen, but like almost 1,000,000 packages of ramen noodles. She wrecked that car and got a new one by the next Monday and had no concept of what that cost her family. She did not even care. It didn't matter to her what that cost. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here waiting for my $1,500 piece of crap to get fixed. When we don't understand the cost of something, we always take it for granted. And I'll tell you this, as somebody who grew up privileged, like, I mean, we've had things pretty well. I still had no concept growing up of what anything costs. Like, most of you in here don't really understand what it takes to raise a child. You fart knockers are expensive. I got 2 daughters, right? I have no idea why. I went to, what is the makeup place in the mall? Sephora? I knew that. Ulta. Okay, good. I feel better. Okay. I went to Ulta the other day and had to buy stuff for my daughter. And that is a mind-blowing expense for makeup. When we don't understand what something costs, we don't ever understand its value. And this week I was thinking about you and the opportunity I got to be in here with you. And I was hit with the revelation is that so many of us, and I was in your situation, I grew up in church. So many of us misunderstand a foundational aspect of what it means to be a Christian. And it is this word, grace. Grace is a concept we talk about a lot in church. If you've grown up in the church, maybe this is your first time here, like, we talk about the word grace a lot. And the problem is we don't understand. We have a profound misunderstanding of what grace actually costs. And everything hinges on this one word. But we take grace for granted. And because of that, because we take grace for granted, we forget the cost. So tonight we're going to talk about grace. Grace is this. This is the definition of grace. It is the unmerited favor of God. Does anyone know what unmerited means? There we go. Undeserved. Grace is a gift that you are given that you don't deserve. Now, we understand it at home, right? When you stay out past curfew and you do something your parents didn't want you to do you want their punishment? Oh, come on. No, of course you don't want their punishment. You want what? Grace. You want them to look at you and go, oh, here, sweetie pie, it's fine. You know what? You're not in any trouble at all. You go. Just stay up until midnight. I'll DoorDash you ice cream. Everything's fine. Nothing's a problem. We want grace. We love the idea of grace when we're at home. I mean, I definitely did growing up. The problem is, as it pertains to what you believe, if you would say you're a Jesus follower, and I am not naive enough to say that I don't think everyone in here is a Jesus follower. I'll say this. I think most of you in here would say that you follow Jesus, and I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand. And if we don't understand, hey, look at me. If you don't grasp the concept of grace and what it means in your life, you will never appreciate what Jesus actually did for you, and it will not affect the way you live tomorrow. If we don't grasp what grace means, and I didn't come here to be the fun guy like Daniel. Like, Daniel can be fun, Mason can be cute, we could do all those things. I'm dad. And what I desperately want is if I could sit down with each and every one of you and take your head in my hands and go, I just want you to understand what Jesus did for you. Because if you grasp that one thing, if you just grasp grace, everything about your whole world changes. The book of Ephesians says this, "For it is by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not of yourselves. It is a gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast." It is by grace you've been saved. So I lived in Lubbock for a while, and then we moved here whenever I was a junior in high school. And I went to school at Wiley, and that was my world. And I grew up with FCA t-shirt Christianity. I sat at my lunch table. This is the honest to God truth. I actually ran into one of these guys just the other day. I sat at my lunch table with guys who every day wore Christian t-shirts. And then every Monday, they would show me videos of them drunk trying to tackle trees on the weekends. That is the honest to God truth. And they would talk about the girls they slept with that week. And then they would go to youth on Wednesdays. And they would go to church with their parents on Sundays. And they would then go party on the weekends and get drunk and sleep around. And then they would go to church on Sundays and they would go to youth on Wednesdays. And it's because we didn't grasp grace. For it is by grace you have been saved through faith. Saved from what? Some of you have grown up in the church. Some of you, like, your whole world has been church stuff, and we still just run over the idea that, hey, you know what you were destined for? Hell. Scripture tells us that every good and perfect gift comes from the Father of lights, of whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. Every good and perfect gift. So if you want to know the difference in heaven and hell, it's this. Imagine every good and perfect gift, and then imagine the complete opposite. Because Scripture says every good and perfect gift comes from one place. Therefore, the other place is the opposite of that. And I don't know about you, but if the option is every good and perfect gift, or the opposite of every good and perfect gift, I want one of those desperately, and I desperately don't want the other one. For it is by grace you have been saved through faith, not by works, so that no man can boast. It is by grace. You've been saved from a destiny that was everything opposite of good and perfect, and given every good and perfect gift, all tied to one word: grace. God's grace breaks the grip of your past so that you can run in His purpose. See, grace doesn't just save you from something. Grace saves you for something. In your life, grace in your life changes the way you'll live tomorrow. It'll change the way you go to college. It'll change the way you get married. It'll change the way you parent your kids. Understanding, grasping grace changes our tomorrow. While the guilt of our sin will always weigh you down. And listen, I don't know where any of you are at. I know where very few of you are at. I can tell you this. In a room this size, I know that a bunch of you are addicted to porn. I know a bunch of you are sleeping around with your boyfriend or girlfriend. I know a bunch of you are doing things behind your parents' back. I know all that thing because I've done this whole shindig. And what happens when we do that is we get weighed down by guilt. And we can mask it, and we can try to show tomorrow that we're not really feeling that. But every person, when they're walking not in the destiny that God has, feels guilt. It's impossible not to. And guilt will always weigh us down, and grace sets you free. It sets you free to move in the way that God has for you. I desperately want you to grab hold of what God has for you. But when we make grace cheap, when grace is easy and cheap and we don't understand the cost of it, we make our purpose in life cheap. So for a second, let's go all the way back. What did grace cost? If you were given every good and perfect gift and a destiny that is heaven, if you say yes to grace, and then the opposite over here, what did grace cost? Here was the last week of Jesus' life. So Jesus rode into Jerusalem. Right, things are all okay at this point. He's hanging out with his bros, all the disciples. They're there. They're having a dinner. Jesus says, somebody's going to deny me. And you got disciple after disciple. And every one of them goes, is it me, Lord? No. Is it me, Lord? No. Is it me, Lord? No. Then Judas, is it me, Rabbi? And then it's Judas. And Judas betrays him. Jesus is in the garden and everything's about to go down. And Judas comes off, one of the guys that had lived life with him. He comes up and he gives him a kiss on the cheek, and then Jesus gets arrested. And then this is where we begin to understand the cost of grace. Jesus gets arrested and he gets marched in front of Pilate. And then he begins the whole process of like a sham trial that Jesus was gonna go through. And Pilate knows, there is a knowledge in this moment of like, there's an option. This is the week of Passover. And that week, you can go into the prison and you can take a bad person and you let them go. That happens every year at Passover. And so they're going to go and like, Pilate's like, I got to get out of jail free card here. I'm going to go into the prison and I'm going to take the worst person I know, Daniel Reinhardt. No, it's not Daniel Reinhardt, it's Barabbas. I'm going to take Barabbas. Sorry, I didn't mean to compare you to Barabbas. That was kind of mean. I'm going to take this person over here and I'm going to compare them to Jesus. And surely these people are going to let Jesus go. So he grabs Barabbas, a bad dude from prison, and he brings him in front. And in the crowd chants like, give us Barabbas, let him free. And then Pilate has no other decision but to send Jesus to his punishment. So I don't know if you ever heard about the cross and like that whole process, but it actually begins long before the cross. It begins with them stripping Jesus of his clothes. This is all grace. Remember, it's all tied to grace. For it is by grace you have been saved through faith. But that grace costs something. Jesus has his arms attached to this post and his back fully extended like this, so that there was no give in his back. And then they would take a whip, and this whip had shards of glass and rock in it, so that when it hit Jesus in the back, it would stick in like a fishing hook. And then they would rip the opposite direction. And when they did that, it would rip not just like scratches, it would rip chunks of flesh out of somebody. And the Romans were so good at this, they knew to get them to the exact point of death, which was 39 lashes. So they whip Jesus. Imagine the first one, takes an inch chunk out of his back. The second one, 39 times. Then they take him off that. They shove a crown of thorns on his head. This was not like a casual rose bush. They think that probably the thorns were between 2 and 4 inches thick, and they shoved them into his skull. And they marched him from where he was all the way to Golgotha, the place of the skull. And they began to walk him there. And Jesus is so broken. His body is so defeated. He falls along the way, and he has to have Simon come and help him take the cross all the way, the rest of the way up the hill. And then they get him to the hill. So we haven't even gotten, remember, for it is by grace you have been saved through faith, but that grace costs something. And Jesus has gone through all this before the cross. And then they get to the cross. And they put it there, and they would put a nail through the wrist. And they would stack their feet one on top of the other, and they would put one nail through the top of it, and then a platform underneath their feet. Because did you know, with the cross, you didn't actually die from blood loss or anything like that. You died because you suffocated to death. Because they would put your body in such a way that to breathe, you had to push up on your feet that were nailed one to another. You would have to push up, take a breath, and then let it out. And eventually your body just can't do it anymore. For it is by grace you've been saved through faith, so that no man could boast. Death on the cross was brutal. And if you are a Christian, if you would put the label on as a Jesus follower, he did that for you. He did it for me. Romans says, therefore, just as sin came into the world through one man, and death through sin, so death spread to all men because all have sinned. And Romans 6 shows us the price of sin, for the wages of sin is death. Grace, the unmerited, undeserved favor of God. And every single one of us needed that. I know this is heavy. I don't know how your sermons are normally. I listened to my wife's sermon from a few weeks ago. She's way better than me. I know we can all agree on that. It's fine. But if we grasp grace, everything changes. It is by grace you've been saved. But that grace had a cost, a tremendous cost for each and every one of us. And Jesus, look at me. Jesus loved you enough that he chose to go to the cross. The Father didn't make him. Jesus chose the cross. He chose that brutality of his body so that you had the opportunity for life, so that you had the opportunity for every good and perfect gift. Romans 5 says, but God showed his love in this, that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Maybe you're not in here. The image maybe you're not a believer in here, but the image I've always gotten from this verse is while you were still sinners, that means this. While my posture towards God was still a middle finger, he still loved me enough to send Jesus. While my posture says, I don't care about you at all, he still looked at you and he said, I want you to have life, and I want you to have life in abundance. I want you to have every good and perfect gift, but it only comes through him. And Jesus did not go to the cross so you could stay stuck in shame. He didn't go to the cross so you could stay stuck in guilt, so you could stay stuck in sin. Jesus went to the cross so that you could find freedom from your past and find life. And so many of us, whenever we have the decisions that we've made, or maybe in our relationships or in all the other areas, we put on all these different identities. And the enemy would love to call you by the sin in your life. He would love to call you by the things that you've done that you know are not right. He loves to do that with me, at least. He loves to tell me the areas of my life and let those be my identity, that is who I am, is the mistakes that I made. The enemy would love nothing more than for us to be known by the sin in our life. Jesus calls you by your purpose, but our purpose is tied to walking in the grace of the cross. And God's grace gives us permission to stop living defined by what we've done and frees us up to live based on what he did for us. You and me have the opportunity for life, but it is by grace you have been saved, not by works, so that no man can boast. And that grace had a cost. And when grace becomes commonplace, the reality of the cross becomes blurry. Here's how I wanted to end today. This verse right here is my favorite verse in all the Bible. It's John 10:10. It says, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But I have come that you may have life and have it in abundance. Hey, you got an enemy that would love nothing more than for you to have bad stuff in your life. He wants bad relationships. He wants bad relationships with your parents. He wants bad boyfriend-girlfriend relationships. He wants nothing good in your life. The enemy came, just like the enemy came to steal life from me, the enemy came to steal life from you. However, he does not get the final word. The enemy doesn't get to say your identity. You have an identity in Jesus when you say yes to him and you understand the concept and the cost of grace and you say, yes, I want that grace. Your identity changes from who you were, somebody that the enemy could come after, to a son and daughter, to somebody that was a slave, but now you're free. And guess what? No one can take that away from you. Years ago, President Obama was in office, and he had daughters when I was starting to have daughters. And I was hit with this revelation one day that changed the way that I view God because of President Obama, which is odd, I know. No matter where President Obama's daughters ever went, to this day, and he hasn't been president for a while, everywhere they go, you know who they are? They're the president's daughter. That is their identity. They're going to get married one day, still the president's daughter. They're going to grow up and get older, still the president's daughter. And when we say yes to grace, nothing can change our identity from a son or daughter of the Most High. Everywhere you go, you're his kid. There's no mistake that could change that. They could go be the dumbest kids on planet Earth, and still they are his kids. And God invites you into that place with him. He wants your identity to shift from what the enemy would love to call you, what the gossips of school would love to say about you, what maybe even your own parents have said to you. And what he would love for you is to be known first, foremost, primarily as a son and daughter of the Most High. That he loved you enough that he would give you grace. Here in just a minute, I'm going to pray. Actually, let's go ahead and bow our heads. Ben, you can go ahead and come up. I'm not going to ask you for a physical response in a room like this because I know this is youth ministry. Here's what I'm going to ask. If you'll just close your eyes, and I know that people are still going to look around, you do it for you. When I was praying this week and thinking this week about our time together tonight, I felt like there are two groups of people in here that need to respond. There's some of you who've never said yes to Jesus. And his invitation to you tonight is just say yes. That grace cost a lot. But he loved you enough to send Jesus. And he wants your destiny to be every good and perfect gift. He wants your destiny to not be the thief came to steal, kill, and destroy, but he came that you may have life. That's the destiny he wants for you. If you've never said yes to Jesus, in just a minute, you're going to go to life groups. I want you to talk to your life group leader about it afterwards. But here's the bigger burden I felt for us tonight. I know what it's like to be a high school kid wearing the label of Christian in Abilene. I grew up here. And I know that it's easy to take for granted the magnitude of what Jesus did for you. So my invitation, if that's you tonight, is to just begin to talk to him about it. Tell him thank you. Ask him to open your eyes even more to the way you are loved, to your identity. Ask him to show you the way that he feels about you. The crazy thing about what we get to do because of what Jesus did on the cross is we get to hear his voice. Maybe there's some things you need to repent of. Maybe there are things you've been hiding from your parents. Things you've been hiding from God. Decisions you've been making that you know are not leading you in the direction that you want. Tell him. We're saved by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony, but that blood has to cover our sins. So tell him. And then as we get back into worship, here's what we're going to do. I think everyone should have gotten communion when they came in. If you didn't, raise your hand and we'll have somebody get you some. Get your communion out. As we talked about grace, we talked about the cross. You can go ahead and stand up too. Do you need communion? Dusty, will you throw me one? Oh, I need two. Oh, this is bad. I couldn't see that at all. Oh, you're okay. I'll get another one. Dusty, try that again. Still nothing. Oh, sports. All right. I want you to take out the bread. the cracker, but don't eat it yet. And I'll tell you what I do every single Sunday. Whether I'm preaching, whether I'm just here, whether I'm somewhere else. I go and get communion, and I hold the cracker for a second. And this sounds weird, but I picture what we talked about tonight. I picture Jesus on the cross. I picture his body broken. Because when you take communion, he tells us the night before he's betrayed, he got his guys together. And then he took the bread. He broke it and he said, "This is my body, which is broken for you." When we take communion, that is what we are remembering. We're remembering the whip and the thorns and the nails. When we take communion, we remember that is the magnitude of the love of God for you, that he was willing to let his body be broken. Let's take the bread together. You can open your shoes. And then he told them that night, he grabbed the wine and he said, "This is my blood of the covenant." And this changed everything for everyone. Before this time, the only way you were made clean is by an innocent animal having to die and shed blood so that you could be clean. And then Jesus came. And he said, "This is my blood of the covenant, poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins." When you take the juice, that is what we remember. Let's take the juice together. You can put that down. I'm going to pray and we're going to worship. God, we thank you for grace. Would we worship over the next few moments in light of grace? In light of the magnitude of the love of God for us, will we worship with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength? So your name will pray.